Hello everyone, my name is NewFlowerGirl, but you can call me Demi, and today's podcast is about Michael Schumacher, also known as Schumi. Today's podcast might be a very, very long one, and that's because there's a lot to find about him. Let's get into it. Before we go, I would like to ask you to subscribe and leave a like. But let's go. Michael Schumacher, born the 3rd of January 1969, is a retired German racing driver who competed in Formula 1 for Jordan, Benetton, Ferrari and Mercedes. Schumacher has a joint record 7 World Drivers' Championship titles, and at the time of his retirement from the sport in 2012 he had records for the most wins, 91, pole positions, 68, and podium finishes, 155, which have since been broken by Lewis Hamilton, while he maintains the record for the most fastest laps, 77, and the most races won in a single season, 13, amongst others. After beginning his racing career in karting, Schumacher enjoyed success in several junior single-seater series. After a one-off Formula 1 appearance with Jordan at the 1991 Belgian Grand Prix, Schumacher was signed by Benetton for the rest of the 1991 season. He won his first and second driver's titles consecutively in 1994 and 1995, twice finishing ahead of runner-up Damon Hill. Schumacher moved to Ferrari in 1996, with whom he won 5 consecutive titles from 2000 to 2004. So, from 2000 to 2004. That sounded really weird. Including I can't pronounce this word. Unprecedented 6th and 7th title, breaking several records. After finishing 3rd in 2005 and 2nd in 2006, Schumacher retired from sport, though he later made a brief return with Mercedes from 2010 to 2012. Over his career, Schumacher was involved in several controversial racing incidents. Twice he was involved in a collision in the final race of a season that decided the title. First with Hill at the 1994 Australian Grand Prix, and later with Jacques Villeneuve at the 1997 European Grand Prix. Schumacher and his younger brother Ralph are the only siblings to win races in Formula 1, and the first siblings to finish first and second in the same race, a feat they repeated in 4 subsequent races. Schumacher was noted for pushing his car to the limit for sustained periods during races and a period fitness regimen. An ambassador for UNESCO, Schumacher has been involved in humanitarian projects and has donated tens of $millions to charity. In December 2013, Schumacher suffered a severe brain injury after a skiing accident. He was placed in a medical induced coma until June 2014. He left hospital in Grenoble for further rehabilitation at the University Hospital of Lausanne before being relocated to his home to receive medical treatment and rehabilitation privately in September 2014. So this is basically the intro, and that's already 5 minutes long. I am gonna record this part in like different sections of time, so if I sound kind of like out of breath and at the end of one session and I don't sound out of breath in next session, then that's why. Yeah, mainly because it's very long and my throat can't handle it, and I don't want to, let this be running, having to listen through it over and over again and cut at the correct time, and that's just gonna hurt my brain, and I won't be in time to sleep, because tomorrow I still have internship. But the time I am recording this, I have internship tomorrow, but by the time you're watching this, it's Sunday tomorrow, so yeah. Let me quickly take a break and get something to drink. And we carry on. Schumacher was born in Hürth. Don't know how to exactly pronounce it, I'm not German. But it is in North Rhine-Westphalia on the 3rd of January 1969, like I said, to Ralph Schumacher, a bricklayer, and his wife Elizabeth. When Schumacher was 4, his father modified his pedal cart by adding a small motorcycle engine. When Schumacher crushed it into a lamppost in Kerpen, his parents took him to the karting track at Kerpen Horn, where he became the youngest member of the karting club. His father soon built him a kart from discarded parts, and at the age of 6, Schumacher won his first club championship. To support his son's racing, Rolf Schumacher took a second job renting and repairing cars, while his wife worked at the track's canteen. Nevertheless, when Michael needed a new engine costing 800 DM, his parents were unable to afford it. He was able to continue racing with support from local businessmen. Regulations in Germany require a driver to be at least 14 years old to obtain a kart license. To get around this, Schumacher obtained a license in Luxembourg at the age of 12. In 1983, he obtained his German license a year after he won the German Junior Car Championship. From 1984 on, Schumacher won many German and European car championships. He joined Eurokart dealer Adolf Neubert in 1985, and by 1987 he was the German and European car champion. Then he quit school and began working as a mechanic. In 1988 he made his first step into a single-seat car racing by participating in the German Formula Ford and Formula Corning series, winning the latter. In 1989, Schumacher signed with Willy Weber's WTS Formula 3 team, funded by Weber. He competed in the German Formula 3 series, winning the title in 1990. He also won the Macau Grand Prix in 1990 under controversial circumstances. He placed second behind Mika Häkkinen in the first heat, 3 seconds behind. At the start of the second heat, he overtook Häkkinen, who only had to finish within 3 seconds of Schumacher to clinch the overall win. In the closing laps, Schumacher made a mistake, allowing Häkkinen to attempt to overtake. Schumacher blocked his competitor, who crashed into the back of his car. While Hakkinen spun and lost time, Schumacher cruised into victory without a real win. At the end of 1990, along with his Formula 3 rivals Heinz-Harald Frentzen and Karl Wendlinger, he joined the Mercedes Junior Racing Program in the World Sports Prototype Championship. This was unusual for a young driver. Most of Schumacher's contemporaries would compete in the Formula 3000 on the way to Formula 1. However, Webber advised Schumacher that being exposed to professional press conferences and driving powerful cars in long-distance races would help his career. In the 1990 World Sports Car Championship season, Schumacher won the season finale at the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez in his Sauber Mercedes C11 and finished 5th in the Drivers' Championship despite only driving in 3 of the 9 races. He continued with the team in 1991 World Sports Car Championship season, winning again at the final race of the season at Autopolis in Japan with a Sauber Mercedes-Benz C291, leading to a 9th place finish in the Drivers' Championship. He also competed at Le Mans during that season, finishing 5th in a car shared with Karl Wendlinger and Fritz Kreutzbeutner. In 1991 he competed in one race in the Japanese Formula 3000 Championship, finishing 2nd. Schumacher was noted throughout his career for his ability to produce fast laps at crucial moments in a race, and to push his car to the very limit for sustained periods. He was also noted for his pioneering fitness regime and ability to galvanize teams around him. Motorsport author Christopher Hilton observed in 2003 that a measure of drivers' capabilities is his performance in wet races, because the most delicate car control and sensitivity are needed, and noted that other great drivers, Schumacher's record in wet conditions show very few mistakes up to the end of the 2003 season. Schumacher won 17 of the 30 races in wet conditions he contested. Some of Schumacher's best performances occurred in such conditions, earning him the nicknames Regenkoning, Rain King, or Regenmeister, Rainmaster, even in the non-German language media. He is known as the Red Baron because of his Ferrari and in reference to the German Manfred von Richthofen, the famous flying ace of World War I. Schumacher's nicknames include Schumi, Shui, and Shu. Schumacher is often credited with popularizing Formula 1 in Germany, where it was formerly considered a fringe sport. When Schumacher retired in 2006, 3 of the top 10 drivers were German, more than any other nationality, and more than have ever been present in Formula 1 history. Younger Germans, such as Sebastian Vettel, felt Schumacher was key in becoming their Formula 1 becoming Formula 1 drivers. The latter part of this Formula 1 career the latter part of his Formula 1 career, and as one of the senior drivers, Schumacher was the president of the Grand Prix Drivers Association. In the 2006 FIA survey, Michael Schumacher was voted the most popular driver in the season among Formula 1 fans. In 2020, Schumacher was voted the most influential person in Formula 1 history. So now we're going to dive a bit deeper into his career. I just moved my mic if you heard that, but yeah. We're going to start off at his Formula 1 debut, which was Jordan 1991. Schumacher made his Formula 1 debut with the Jordan 14 at the 1991 Belgian Grand Prix, driving car number 32 as a replacement for the imprisoned Bertrand Gachot. Schumacher, still a contracted Mercedes driver, was signed by Eddie Jordan after Mercedes paid Jordan $150,000 for his debut. The week before the race, Schumacher impressed Jordan designer Gary Anderson and team manager Trevor Foster during a test drive at Silverstone. His manager Willie Webber assured Jordan that Schumacher knew the challenging Spa track well, although in fact he had only seen it as a spectator. During the race weekend, teammate Andrea de Cesaris was meant to show Schumacher the circuit, but was held up with contract negotiations. Schumacher then learned the track on his own by cycling around the track on a photo bike he brought with him. He impressed the paddock by qualifying 7th in this race. This matched the team's season best grid position and outqualified 11-year veteran de Cesaris. Motorsport journalist Joe Soward reported that after qualifying, clumps of German journalists were talking about the best talent since Stefan Baref. Schumacher retired on the first lap of the race with clutch problems, which was quite sad. But now we're going to move on to Benetton, which was following his debut all the way to 1995. Following his Belgian Grand Prix debut, and despite an agreement in principle between Jordan and Schumacher's Mercedes management that would see the German race for the Irish team for the remainder of the season, Schumacher was engaged by Benetton Ford for the following race. Jordan applied an injunction in the UK court to prevent Schumacher driving for Benetton, but lost the case as they had not yet signed a final contract. 1991 to 1993. Schumacher finished the 1991 season with 4 points out of 6 races. His best finish was 5th in the second race, the Italian Grand Prix, which he finished ahead of his teammate and 3-time world champion Nelson Piquet. At the start of the 1992 season, the Sauber team, planning their Formula 1 debut, with Mercedes backing for the following year, invoked a clause in Schumacher's contract that had stated that if Mercedes entered Formula 1, Schumacher would drive for them. It eventually agreed that Schumacher would stay with Benetton. Peter Sauber said that Schumacher didn't want to drive for us. Why would I have forced him? Did he say? The year was dominated by the Williams of Nigel Mansell and Riccardo Patrese, featuring powerful Renault engines, semi-automatic gearboxes, and active suspension to control the car's ride height. The conventional Benetton B192, Schumacher took his place on the podium for the first time, finishing third in the Mexican Grand Prix. He went on to take his first victory at the Belgian Grand Prix in a wet race at the Spa-Francorchamps circuit, which by 2003 he would call far and away my favorite track. He finished third in the Drivers' Championship in 1992 with 53 points, 3 points behind runner-up Patrese. The Williams of Damon Hill and Alain Prost also dominated the 1993 season. Benetton introduced their own active suspension and traction control early in the season, last of the front-running teams to do so. Schumacher won one race, the Portuguese Grand Prix, where he beat Prost and had 9 podium finishes, but retired in 7 of the other 15 races. He finished the season in 4th with 52 points. Now we're going to go on to 1994 and 1995 is World Championship years, where he actually won World Championships. And this is quite a long one. So yeah. After this one I'll take a quick break and then we'll come back. The 1994 season was Schumacher's first Drivers' Championship. The season, however, was marred by the deaths of Ayrton Senna, witnessed by Schumacher, who was directly behind in second position, and Roland Ratzenberger, who during the San Marino Grand Prix, by allegations that several teams, but most particularly Schumacher's Benetton team, broke the sport's technical regulations. Schumacher won 6 of the first 7 races and was leading the Spanish Grand Prix before a gearbox failure left him stuck in 5th gear. Schumacher finished the race in 2nd place. Following the San Marino Grand Prix, the Benetton, Ferrari and McLaren teams were investigated on suspicion of breaking the FIA-imposed ban on electronic aids. Benetton and McLaren initially refused to hand over their source code for investigation. When they did so, the FIA discovered hidden functionality in both teams' software, but no evidence that it had been used in a race. Both teams were fined $100,000 for their initial refusal to cooperate. However, the McLaren software, which was a gearbox program that allowed automatic shifts, was deemed legal. By contrast, the Benetton software was seen to be a form of launch control that would have allowed Schumacher to make perfect starts, which was explicitly outlawed by the regulations. However, there was no evidence to suggest that this software was actually used. At the British Grand Prix, Schumacher was penalised for overtaking on the formation lap. He then ignored the penalty and the subsequent black flag, which indicates that a driver must immediately return to the pits, for which he was disqualified and later given a 2-race ban. Benetton blamed the incident on a communication error between the stewards and the team. Schumacher was also disqualified after winning the Belgian Grand Prix after his car was found to have illegal wear on its skid block, a measure used after the accidents at Imola to limit downforce and hence cornering speed. Benetton protested that the skid block had been damaged when Schumacher spun over a curb, but the FIA rejected their appeal because of the pattern of wear and damage visible on the block. These incidents helped Damon Hill close the points gap, and Schumacher led by a single point going into the final race in Australia. On lap 36, Schumacher hit a guardrail on the outside of the track while leading. Hill attempted to pass, but as Schumacher's car returned to the track, there was a collision on the corner, causing them both to retire. As a result, Schumacher won a very controversial championship, the first German to do so. Jochen Rindt raced under the Austrian flag. At the FIA conference after the race, the new championship dedicated his title to Ayrton Senna. In 1995, Schumacher successfully defended his title with Benetton. He now had the same Renault engines as Williams. He accumulated 33 more points than second place Damon Hill, with teammate Johnny Herbert, who's now I think a Sky Sports F1 presentator and maybe commentator, I don't know. He took Benetton to its first Constructors Championship and became the youngest two-time world champion in Formula One history. The season was marred by several collisions with Hill, in particular an overtaking maneuver by Hill took them both out of the British Grand Prix on lap 45 and again on lap 23 of the Italian Grand Prix. Schumacher won 9 out of the 17 races and finished on the podium 11 times. Only once did he qualify worse than 4th at the Belgian Grand Prix. He qualified 16th, but nevertheless went on to win the race. Now we're going to move on to his days as a Ferrari driver, which was 1996 to 2006. In 1996, Schumacher joined Ferrari, a team that had last won the Drivers' Championship in 1979 and the Constructors' Championship in 1983 for a salary of $60 million over 2 years. He left Benetton a year before his contract with them expired. He later cited the team's damaging actions in 1994 as his reason for opting out of his deal. He later Benetton employees Rory Bryan, designer, and Ross Brawn, technical director, joined Ferrari. Ferrari had previously come closer to the championship in 1982 and 1990. The team had suffered a disastrous downturn in the early 1990s, partially as its famous V12 engine was no longer competitive against the smaller, lighter and more fuel-efficient V10s of its competitors. Various drivers, notably Alain Prost, had given the vehicles labels such as truck, pig, and accident waiting to happen. Furthermore, the poor performance of the Ferrari pit crews was considered a running joke, or as Fernando Alonso would say, a yoke. Bad puns with NewFlowerGirl. At the end of 1995, though the team had improved into a solid competitor, it was still considered inferior to front-running teams such as Benetton and Williams. Schumacher declared the Ferrari 412T good enough to win the championship. Schumacher, Ross Brawn, and Roy Brown and Jed Todd, hired in 1993, have been credited as turning this once struggling team into the most successful team in Formula 1 history. Three-time world champion Jackie Stewart believes that the transformation of the Ferrari team was Schumacher's greatest feat. Eddie Irvine also joined the team, moving from Jordan. During winter testing, Schumacher first drove a Ferrari, the 1995 Ferrari 412 D2, and was 2 seconds faster than former regulars Jean Alesi and Gerhard Berger had been. Schumacher finished third in the Drivers' Championship in 1996 and helped Ferrari to second place in the Constructors' Championship and ahead of his old team Benetton. He won 3 races, more than the team's total tally for the period from 1991 to 1995. Early in the 1996 season, the car had a reliability trouble and Schumacher did not finish 6 of the 16 races. He took his first win for Ferrari at the Spanish Grand Prix, where he lapped the entire field up to third place in the wet. Having taken the lead on lap 19, he consistently lapped 5 seconds faster than the rest of the field in the difficult conditions. In the French Grand Prix, Schumacher qualified in pole position but suffered engine failure on the race's formation lap. However, at Spa-Francorchamps, Schumacher used well-timed pit stops to fend off Williams driver Jacques Villeneuve. Following that, at Monza, Schumacher won in front of the tifosi. If you don't know what the tifosi is, I think it's basically the Ferrari fans, I think they call them. But it's basically the fans at Italy, the Italian fans. Yeah, I think that's what it means. I have to look it up, and I'll put it in the description what the tifosi actually is. So yeah, we're gonna move on to championship deciding conditions, because there has been a few, and those happened like so many times. But yeah, there are quite a few, I have to say. 1994 Australian Grand Prix. Going into the 1994 Australian Grand Prix, the final race of the 1994 season, Schumacher led Damon Hill by a single point in the Drivers' Championship. Schumacher led the race from the beginning, but on lap 35, he went off track and hit the wall with his right side wheels, returning to the track at reduced speed with car damage, but still leading the race. At the next corner, Hill attempted to pass on the inside, but Schumacher turned in sharply and they collided. Both cars were eliminated from the race as neither driver scored. Schumacher took the title. The race steward judged it as a racing incident and took no action against either driver, but public opinion is divided over the incident, and Schumacher was vilified in the British media. 1997 European Grand Prix. At the 1997 European Grand Prix at Jerez, that's how you pronounce it, you don't say Jerez, you say Jerez. The last race of the season, Schumacher led Williams' Jacques Villeneuve by 1 point in the Drivers' Championship, as Villeneuve attempted to pass Schumacher at a dry sack corner on lap 48. Schumacher turned in and the right front wheel of Schumacher's Ferrari hit the left side pod of Villeneuve's car. Schumacher retired from the race as a result, but Villeneuve finished in third place, taking 4 points and so becoming the world champion. The race stewards did not initially award any penalty, but 2 weeks after the race, Schumacher was disqualified from the entire 1997 Drivers' Championship. After the FIA disciplinary hearing found that this maneuver was an instinctive reaction, and although deliberate, not made with malice or premeditation, it was a serious error. Schumacher accepted the decision and admitted having made a mistake. Schumacher's actions were widely condemned by British, German and Italian newspapers. This made Schumacher the only driver in a race sport as of 2020 to be disqualified from a Drivers' World Championship. I'm going to take a little break now, and then we're going to move on to team orders, because that was a thing back then. So, team orders. Historically, team orders have always been an accepted part of Formula 1. However, in the final meters of the 2002 Austrian Grand Prix, Schumacher's teammate Rubens Barrichello slowed his car under orders from Ferrari to allow Schumacher to pass and win the race. Although the switching of positions did not break any actual sporting or technical regulation, it angered fans, and it was claimed that the team's actions showed a lack of sportsmanship and respect to the spectators. Many argued that Schumacher did not need to be given wins in only the 6th race of the season, particularly given that he had already won 4 of the previous 5 Grand Prix, and that Barrichello had dominated the race weekend up to that point. At the podium ceremony, Schumacher pushed Barrichello onto the top step, and for this disturbance, the Ferrari team incurred a $1 million US fine. Later in the season, at the end of the 2002 United States Grand Prix, Schumacher slowed down within sight of the finishing line, allowing Barrichello to win by 0.011 seconds, the second closest margin in F1 history. Schumacher's explanation varied between it being him returning the favor for Austria now that Schumacher's title was secure, or trying to engineer a dead heat, a feat derided as near impossible in the sport, where timings are taken to within a thousandth of a second. The FIA subsequently banned team orders with firms with race result, but the ban was lifted from the 2011 season because the ruling was difficult to enforce. Now, Schumacher, I know he was a good driver if you give him a good car. Well, you don't have to give him a good car because he still does the magic, but he was also driving dangerously, and that's what this part is all about. Now let me take a bit of my water. Right, so dangerous driving. 1991, the 430 kilometers of Nürburgring. During his spell in Sauber in the 1991 Sports Car World Championship, Schumacher was involved in a serious incident with Derek Warwick in that year's 430 kilometers of Nürburgring. While trying to set his flying lap in qualifying, Schumacher encountered Warwick's Jaguar on a slow lap, resulting in time loss for Schumacher. As retaliation for being in his way, Schumacher swerved the Sauber onto Warwick's car, hitting the Jaguar's nose and front wheel. Enraged by the German's attitude, Warwick drove into the pits and chased a fleeing Schumacher on foot through the Sauber pits. He eventually caught up with Schumacher and it took intervention from several mechanics and Schumacher's teammate Joachim Mass to prevent Warwick physically assaulting Schumacher. Now that's not very sportsmanlike. But he should never hit someone, so it was kind of Schumi's fault to do that. But yeah, we don't know how people are going to react to certain things, so but it was a reaction to what Warwick did. But we all have different reactions to everything, don't we? But let's carry on. 1998 Canadian Grand Prix. The 1998 Canadian Grand Prix saw Schumacher accused of dangerous driving when his exit from the pit lane forced Heinz-Harald Frentzen off the track into retirement. Despite receiving a 10-second penalty, Schumacher recovered and won the race. The 2010 Hungarian Grand Prix. Toward the end of the 2010 Hungarian Grand Prix, Rubens Barrichello attempted to pass Schumacher down the inside of the main straight. Schumacher closed the inside line to force Barrichello on the outside, but Barrichello persisted on the outside at 118 miles per hour, that is 219 kilometers per hour. Despite the close proximity of the concrete wall and Schumacher leaving him only inches to spare, Barrichello said, "It is the most dangerous thing that I have been through, and there is not a rule for that, but between ourselves we could take a line to stick to it, and that's it." Schumacher said that obviously there was space enough to go through. "We didn't touch, so I guess I just left enough space for him to come through." Ross Brawn said, "At the end of the day, he gave him enough space. You can argue that it was marginal, but it was tough. But it was just tough racing." A race of ex-drivers and commentators were highly critical of Schumacher. Although there was no race incident, the race stewards, same with Derek Warwick of the 1991 Nürburgring incident, wanted to black flag Schumacher since that would have shown a better example to our young drivers. The Hungaroring incident was ruled to be dangerous, and Schumacher received a 10-place grid penalty for the next race. Schumacher accepted the decision and apologized. After my next break, we're gonna go on to other incidents, because there hasn't just been racing incidents and dangerous driving, but also other incidents, which I will go through after my little break. Now in more recent times, it is, at this point, December 29th, 2013. Schumacher was skiing with his then 15-year-old son Mick, descending the Combe de Laurey below the Dents de Bourget above Méribel in the French Alps, while crossing an unsecured off-piste area between Piste Camois and Piste Maudet. He fell and hit his head on a rock, sustaining a serious head injury despite wearing a ski helmet. According to his physicians, he would most likely have died if he had not been wearing a helmet. He was airlifted to Grenoble Hospital, where he underwent 2 surgical interventions. Schumacher was put into a medical inducted coma because of traumatic brain injury. By March, there was small encouraging signs, and in early April, he was showing moments of consciousness as he gradually withdrew from the medical induced coma. On June 16, 2014, after fully regaining consciousness, Schumacher left Grenoble Hospital for further rehabilitation at the University Hospital CHUV in Lucerne, Switzerland. On the 9th of September 2014, Schumacher left CHUV and was brought back to his home for further rehabilitation. In November 2014, it was reported that Schumacher was paralyzed and in a wheelchair. He cannot speak and has memory problems. In a video interview released in May 2015, Schumacher's manager, Sabine Kem, said that his condition is slowly improving, considering the severeness of the injury he had. In September 2016, Felix Demi, lawyer for Schumacher, told a German court that his client Bund could walk a couple of steps. In December 2016, Schumacher's manager stated that Michael's health is not a public issue, so we will continue to make no comment in that regard. In July 2016, former Ferrari manager Jean Todt gave an interview to Radio Monte Carlo giving a brief update on Schumacher's health, saying that Schumacher was making good progress, but also struggles to communicate. Todt also said that Schumacher is able to watch Formula 1 races on television at his home in Switzerland. In September 2019, Le Parisien reported that Schumacher has been admitted to the Hospital Ménager, described as a pioneer in cell surgery, following the treatment which involved him receiving an anti-inflammatory stem cell perfusion. Medical staff stated that Schumacher was conscious. In November 2020, Schumacher's condition continued to improve, although he is reported to have muscle atrophy and osteoporosis from 6 years in bed confinement. But we can state from this that he is still alive and he's doing good. I have seen I've seen some things like on the internet when I was looking for this photo that underneath one of the photos it said that he was out of bed, and I did not click on to see from what year the post was, but he is doing good. That's all I know. But thank you all very much for watching and listening to this 50-minute long podcast, which is definitely the longest I have ever done. There are more podcasts coming. I'm hoping to do one of YouTuber Tiamat Marduk, also known as Benjamin Daly. He makes racing game content, mostly on F1 games. I've asked him if he wants to join in on the podcast. But if not, I'll just, Google it like I do everything. But yeah, thank you all very much for listening to this podcast. And I will see you guys next time, which is, again, on a Monday. So yeah, bye guys!